Hello, how are you? I think we're live.
I'm doing great. Yourself?
Great. So I'm trying to make sure we can both fit in the screen here. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Chris. See you waving.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah. So we are excited to be here to talk about All Ride for Jackson. And today we're going to talk a little bit about biking gear, nutrition, hydration, safety, and prep for the upcoming ride. Most of you know a little bit about the Jackson Chance Foundation. This is our 6th annual All Ride for Jackson. We are doing a 2-day, 111-mile bike ride, Saturday, August 21st, and Sunday, August 22nd. We bike round trip from Chicago to Valparaiso and back, and all of the proceeds that we raise go to fund the NICU transportation program. And today we are here to answer questions anyone may have about the ride. And I'm happy to have Terry here joining us, who is not only my husband and Jackson's father, but he's the real catalyst to the All Ride. Terry is an avid biker, and starting this event was a real way to bring his two passions together, helping NICU families and biking. I'm super proud that in our 6th year we are over 30 riders from year one when we were six,
maybe 7.
Yeah, and we have a fundraising goal of $111,000 this year, and I think we are right around 70. I haven't checked recently, but
just under.
Yeah, just under that. So I'm really optimistic that we're going to make our goal. So welcome, Terry, and if you want to just tell a little bit about why you started the All Ride for Jackson.
Well, yeah, thank you for the warm introduction. I do appreciate it. Yes, I mean a lot of it had to do with obviously throughout the course of Jackson's stay in the NICU, many times as a way to kind of just clear one's mind, I tended to go off on short bike rides, right? And shortly after Jackson's passing, one of the things that kind of stuck with me was wanting to find a different way to kind of pay tribute to his memory and honor him. And I thought, it would be a beautiful way to ingratiate others to a longer bike ride, something that, would not only exciting, but potentially be a little bit challenging. And that's how we embarked on it.
Great, exciting. So today we're going to do a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the ride, right?
All right.
So one of the very simple and important questions that people have is, what type of bike should I use?
Very good question. While we have had riders in the past either use or attempt to ride on a mountain bike, it is definitely preferred and recommended that you go with a road bike. Not only a road bike, but having slick tires.
Mm-hmm. And that's because it'll be that much harder for you on a mountain bike, right?
Correct.
Something I didn't know as not an avid biker before. What about rental bikes? Do we have rental bikes available for people?
We do not currently. Something that we have looked into, unfortunately, this year due to the high demand for bikes and limited supply. It was not something that we could pull off, but I'm sure there may be other options that people can consider if need be.
Anything important if you get a new bike? Can you hop right on the race, or do you need to prep or get familiar with the bike? Or
we would certainly suggest that you one gets familiar with their bike, try to take it out for a few rides, get adjusted to it, particularly with one's buttocks.
So true.
That can come into play,
Yeah.
particularly on day 2. So it is highly recommended that even for individuals who in thought are pretty active in general, yes, get out on your bike, try to get in 3 to 5 rides, if not more, and more than anything else, kind of get adjusted to the seat.
Yeah, getting accustomed to sitting on the bike for a long period is something that's always important, at least for me.
Absolutely.
What about some of the necessary gear and supplies that bikers need?
I would say generally we do a very, very thorough job of making sure that we provide most of the essentials. Mm-hmm. But if there are any gear, supply specific to one's bike, we would definitely, again, recommend that you guys take time to pack those items and bring them along.
Right. What about helmets?
Helmets are mandatory. Helmets are a must. Unfortunately, we will not allow a rider to ride without a helmet, just for safety reasons, of course. But beyond that, we would also suggest that you might want to consider gloves. Sometimes your hands can get a little bit sore, stiff throughout the ride, and it's just another way of kind of padding it for a longer ride.
What about like other supplies? Like what if I get a flat tire? Do I need to bring my own spare? Does JCF have a spare?
Yeah, I just kind of piggyback off what I just said again. If we do, again, we are really well stocked when it comes to gear. But again, if there's particular tubes that are specific or things that are specific to one's bike, we definitely, again, suggest that you bring that stuff.
Great. And then what about clip-ons for your feet? Do most people on the ride have them? Do some people? Are they important?
It varies. It is less important, but it definitely varies. I think that it comes down to personal preference. If it's something, as a matter of fact, myself, this being our 6th year, up until this point, I have always ridden with non-clip-ins, but I kind of moved to clip-ins this year. So I'm still adjusting myself, but to answer your question, no, they are not needed.
But I can attest that you go much faster with the clip-ons.
You
I have a harder time keeping up.
You definitely get a lot more efficiency out of your pedal
Yeah.
stroke.
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
No
Anything
worries.
else you want to add to the riders?
No, I think this is great. I hope everyone who's going to be joining us for 2021 Owl Ride is excited and ready to go. I know I am, and look forward to seeing many of you ride weekend.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes. And so now we are going to welcome Chris, which let me figure out if I can get add him to the screen here. Let's see. Chris, if you're there, if you want to ask to join and I can add you to the screen, that would be great. Chris is going to talk a little bit about hydration and nutrition. Here we go. Let's see, go live. So while Chris is joining us, I will, he is a passionate athlete, a triathlete. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Good.
Good, great. He has been a JCF board member for 3 years and been on the All Ride committee. He is a husband and father to 2 young girls, Fiona and Emmy. And Emmy was born prematurely and spent some time at Lurie's, and that's where Chris became introduced to us. So welcome, Chris. If you just want to introduce yourself and maybe why you support the All Ride, that would be great.
Yeah, so I got involved with Jackson Chance because, like most parents that have spent time in the NICU, it's a very scary and dangerous feeling. You know, you don't know what's going on, particularly if you have other children. And like probably a lot of us that have gone through it, you panic. And I was looking for corporate housing, parking. How am I going to do all this? How am I going to take care of my family? And I was so surprised at the awesome support, not just Jackson Chance, but multiple charities that approach you. And you're just shocked that housing, parking, all this is given to you at a Chicago hospital, so you don't have to worry about that, and you can really focus on your family and being there for you, not only your kids but your spouse. In our case, commuting between the suburbs, because for those of you who haven't been in the NICU, you can't spend the night, so it's not as easy as just hunkering down. You need to you have to. There's a big logistical nightmare to see your kids. So that's how I got involved, and then once my daughter got out and we got a little bit of the trouble behind us, I just decided to see if I can get involved, and that's how I met your awesome team. And it's been a good 3 years. I wish we could get the ping pong ball back, but hopefully next year.
Yeah, it's great. Well, as I mentioned, you're an avid runner, cyclist, triathlete. Do you want to talk a little bit about nutrition, hydration? How do you prepare yourself for the ride? Any kind of tips you have for newer riders or even experienced riders?
Yeah, so I mean, just to start, nutrition is very personal. Just like we all have certain foods that bother us, you know, after. And so what I want to encourage everyone to do is, you know, make sure you're not changing your habits because of the ride. But generally, you know, the weeks going into riding or racing, just high protein, high carb. Make sure if you do have a hard ride, make sure you get some protein in your body 20 minutes after the ride. Make sure you're having enough calories to offset what you're burning is the most important thing. Week of, my only changes are typically cut the crap, no bad food that you sneak. I like to avoid the bad meals before a race or a super long ride. And sometimes I'll cut out coffee too, just because if you have some caffeine on the ride in the seat, you can really feel a boost from it. So I like to cut out coffee the week too. The days before are probably the most important for all of us because that's, when you're going to actually feel the effects. And what I like to say is the general rule is the hydration starts 48 hours before. So, 48 hours before the ride, start drinking Gatorade, drink more water than normal. It is August. It could be super hot, so we don't want to take any chances of getting dehydrated. The great news about the Jackson Chance ride is typically when I'm riding 4, 5, 6 hours, it's all in seat. So you got to pack it all into your body and your bottles. What's great about the ride though is we have a lot of frequent stops. The food is awesome. It's the first time I did it, I was pleasantly surprised by the selection and the quality of the food. So there'll be no problem having access to calories. But yeah, I mean, just eat probably more than you think on the ride is probably key because we're just not riding one day, we're riding 2 days, and you'll get through the first day, but we want to make sure we're also fueling for the second day on the first day.
Yeah. So any tips for the night, like the night of the first night? Because I know for me, I'm always like so hungry, but I also want to wake up feeling good. So that balance of overeating, but being ready to ride again in day 2. Any advice there?
Well, high protein for sure. Try to get as much protein in, particularly right after the ride. For me, I go-to foods. Foods I know that aren't going to mess up my stomach. That's what the last thing you want is the next morning to be feeling heavy or, bloated, whatever it is. So stick with foods that are good for you, carbs and protein, but make sure it's not something you've never had the day before a big workout.
You mentioned hydration. What about Gatorade, hydration tablets, water? Any best practices in your experience you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I generally like to drink. I mean, it's a combo of things, but I generally like to take down half a bottle to a bottle of water. If you have the standard bottles we throw on our bikes per hour is my general rule. Definitely electrolytes. Luckily, like we talked about before, we don't have to worry about carrying all that all the time. So whatever you're comfortable carrying on the bike, maybe a little bit of water, but there's definitely all kinds of Gatorade and electrolytes at our rest stops that make it nice and easy. But yeah, so I go back to the general rule, try it before, because even Gatorade sometimes can mess with people's stomach if you're bouncing around a little bit. So make sure you drink some Gatorade on your rides and when you're practicing to make sure you don't get stomach sick during the ride.
Great. That's great. Well, any last minute thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, I guess, like I said, most importantly, lots of protein. I personally don't like to eat a heavy meal the night before. For me, the best result I've gotten is make sure that breakfast. So 24 hours before we go, have a huge breakfast, pancakes with peanut butter, all kinds of good stuff, bacon, eggs, this is like kind of the works. So it's kind of like your last splurge meal. And then as you go throughout that day before, that's where I stick to high protein, high carbs, not a ton of food. I don't gorge myself in lunch and dinner, but I have stuff that I know won't mess up my stomach. And then for me in the mornings of the ride, you don't want to feel stomach sick again. So I like to eat a couple hours before the ride, maybe wake up, have a bagel with peanut butter, some applesauce, a banana, something like that. But you don't want to eat your breakfast 10 minutes before we go. So most of us will be driving or commuting. So I would make sure you have your breakfast prepared the night before and just pound it before you get on the road that morning.
Great. That's great advice. Well, thank you, Chris. We're excited to be riding in a couple of weeks with you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Great. All right, so we are now going to welcome Tony. So Tony, if you're there, give a request and I'll have you join us. Tony's been an All Ride community member since 2019. Let's see, here we go. that I think he'll be joining us soon. He was the All Right Safety and Route Leader. Welcome, Tony.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
I was just giving a little bit of an introduction. We're super excited to have you as part of the race again. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience, and why you support the ride?
Yeah, so I've been biking for quite a while, and like a lot of cyclists, I sort of started out as just a commuter cyclist and realized that it's something that I really enjoy doing. I've done quite a few distance rides, some of which were with some other OWL member riders as well, some 100-mile rides, a couple 2-day rides. It's just a great way to exercise, and if you're going to do it, it's a great opportunity to pair up with great organizations like Jackson Chance Foundation to help people. People generally are impressed with long distance rides like this, and it's just a good opportunity to do something you enjoy doing and help a really great organization.
Great. So how can riders prepare, or should they prepare their bike and their gear for the ride?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, the most common problem that I think cyclists have is that they don't realize that bike tires are not like your car tires. Air needs to be put in your bike tires almost every other day. Every 3 days at least. Bike tires lose air gradually over time, and it makes a huge difference if your tires are not pumped up properly. It makes it much, much harder to pedal, and you're doing way more work than you really have to if they're not properly pumped up. That's probably the easiest thing. We will have bike pumps at the ride, but anytime you go out on your own, you really should be doing that. Oil on your chain is also a really nice thing that you should be doing just as bike maintenance. Tires do wear out. We have a couple weeks. If you're concerned about that, if this isn't a new bike you're riding, it's not a bad idea to swing by your local bike shop and just say, hey, I'm about to do a 111-mile bike ride. Can you look at my bike and make sure my tires are okay? Generally speaking, local bike shops have tires if they need to be swapped out. You don't want to find out after 60 miles that you don't have another 60 in your bike. So just stop by and take a look at that. Those I think are the main things as far as what you should be doing. Obviously, we've touched on helmets as well. That's a necessity. That you shouldn't get on your bike without a helmet. A helmet is more important to me than tires.
Yeah,
so.
Definitely agree with that. And I did not know about the air in your tires before, and I think I was making it harder for myself for a long time. So I've definitely started checking and noticed a difference when I'm staying on top of that.
Yeah, it's something that every cyclist has to learn the hard way because it sounds so silly. You're like, oh, a couple pounds of pressure, but it makes a world of difference.
Yeah. What about what are some of the items we should bring with us en route, store in the van? The most important items that we wouldn't want to forget.
Yeah, the vans transport all of our stuff. Anything that you think that you're going to want to be comfortable in Valparaiso. A change of clothes, whatever you need to sleep, that type of thing, comfortable shoes. You'll probably want that type of thing. What you'll need with you on the ride are, most importantly, I would say a water bottle. Hydration is super important. This ride is in August. We could have very hot weather. And though the stops are really close, you'll want water in between. I would also recommend a bottle that you can drink from without having to stop and unscrew a top. They sell a lot of bottles that there's a little nozzle on the top that you just pull up. You can do it with your teeth and squeeze the water into your mouth. That's more useful because we're not going to stop every mile and a half so you can get off your bike and unscrew the top and take a drink. That's just not an efficient use of time. If you like cycling with gloves, I recommend them. They have some padding on the hands so that helps with some of the numbness and tingling that people frequently experience. You don't need to carry a ton of stuff with you on the ride. The van has been mentioned a couple times. You guys, that van is a rolling golden corral with food. It's very well stocked with all of the foods that you will need. Some carbohydrate boosts, some water. You don't need to bring 4 bottles of water or, you know, a gallon. You'll be able to refill every, you know, stops I think are 5 to 15 miles apart. Some people like to bike with music. If you want to bring an iPad or an iPod or headphones, that's an option as well.
Great. I know we talked before about tires, spares. Are they specific per bike, or do I need to get something, you know, for my specific tire, or will JCF have extras, or how to prepare in case there's a flat? 'Cause I think that's probably pretty common that there might be at least one flat, you know, on the ride.
Yeah, and knock on wood that it doesn't happen, but
Yeah.
you should always have, whenever you leave the house with your bike, you should always have a spare. Your bike has specific tires that go with that bike, and there's some overlap. My bike and your bike might have the same size tires, but I don't think you should be relying on anybody else. You should, when you stop by the local bike store, just tell them I need at least one spare. They sell little packs that go on the back of your seat that you can slide it in. If you do get a flat along the way, people on the ride will know how to change it. We'll be able to help you, but you should have your specific tube. It's just the tube. You don't need to bring the whole tire, just the tube that goes inside it. Yeah, that's something that's very important.
Great. Now, if I have a tube that I bought 4 years ago, is that going to be good, or do I need to have that checked?
I wouldn't, it's probably fine, but I wouldn't roll the dice with that on a long ride like this. If you're just riding down to Target, then, you know, maybe, but not on a ride like this. Just swing by your store. The tubes are super inexpensive. They're just a few bucks.
Great. So what does the typical timeline look for the ride?
So day one, we start early. Everyone gets to the start point, Michigan and Lake Mila, at 5:15, and that's where we drop off all of our stuff and check in, make sure we've got everything. At 5:45, we do a safety check. We talk about just proper etiquette and make sure our bikes are okay. We're actually breaking the ride into 2 separate groups this year, so they'll have 2 different departure points where we roll out. I know that the first group rolls out at 6 o'clock in the morning, and that is the group that is a little more social, wants to take their time with the ride. They're not interested in really pushing as fast as they can, so they leave at 6. I know that sounds very early, but here's the thing. It gets warm fast.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be out there and, you know, the noonday sun and still have another 30 miles to go. So we leave early, gets us out of downtown fast before traffic gets too bad. So at 6 o'clock, the social riders roll out. And then at 6:30, the group that wants to ride a little bit faster rolls out. And that gives the groups time to sort of ride at the pace that they're comfortable with and keeps us all sort of in one group, at least within close proximity. Things change, but our goal is to get to Valparaiso around 1:30. There is a shuttle that comes back to the city for our one-day riders. That shuttle will leave around 3. And then we have dinner together on Saturday night at 6 o'clock. Sunday, we start a little bit later, not that much later. At 6:30, we sort of all get together, drop off our bags, and we roll out. The first group rolls out at 7. The second group rolls out at 7:30. And we plan to be back in Chicago around 2:30 in the afternoon. And we have a post-ride party that goes until about 6:30.
Great. And I will say that first day does sound early, but when you drive out around the lakefront and the sun's just coming up, it's a really, really beautiful ride. It's one of my, most memorable. I've remembered every year. It's really a nice way to start the ride off.
Yeah, there's always a little bit of grumbling at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
I think that's natural, but around mile 5, they've forgotten and they're really happy to be a part of the experience.
Exactly. Yeah. So how long is the route, and what can riders expect on the trails?
So it's really important for us that the ride be around 111 miles. We aim as closely as possible to that, and I'm happy to say that this year we're pretty close. I think it's about 58 miles each way, so we're coming in at about 116 miles.
Mm-hmm.
But the route is entirely either bike lane or trail. It's a very safe route. There's a few stretches where we have to go through city. We ride into Valparaiso, so there's a little bit of a stretch there where we're on it. But we do a really nice job of making sure the route is almost entirely through bike trails. We're not, on heavily traveled roads. It's a really nice route. A lot of the route is covered by trees. It's a safe route, and it is. I've done the route a couple times. It's all paved. I don't believe there's anything that's gravel.
Yeah, you're right. And I think if you go on our fundraising main page, in that video, it actually has some really great footage of some of the areas on the route, which is really nice to see. So what about people who've never ridden in a group? Is there any advice on how to safely ride with a pack of people versus normally being solo?
Yeah, the biggest thing I think with riding in a group is communication. You have to bike with other people and keep in mind that you're biking with other people. Nobody can see through you. You can't see through anybody else. So communication becomes really important. If something is coming up, a hazard, you have to let the people know behind you. You don't want to be surprised by a pothole or, some type of hazard, a dog that you didn't see that is coming. Communication. And I mentioned earlier that some people like to ride with while they listen to music. I get it. That's fine. I would just say when you're riding with a group, it's really, really important that you have at least one ear open. Because if I'm in front of you saying, I'm slowing or I'm stopping, you need to be able to hear that. Otherwise, it becomes dangerous. We're responsible for ourselves, but in a group ride, you're also responsible for the people that are behind you. When we do the safety check, we'll talk about signals. Communication on a bike group isn't always just verbal because the person behind you might not be able to hear you because you're too far ahead or the wind is blowing in their ears. And so there's some hand signals that we'll go over so that there are no surprises. Communication, and you need to be able to also listen if other people are communicating. That I think is probably the biggest difference between just going out on your normal stroll if you're by yourself.
Yeah, I agree. So any other last minute or most important safety tips you want to leave anyone who's listening, wondering?
Yeah, the helmet, communication, being aware, making sure that you are not only following the person in front of you, but looking around, just being aware, take the time to notice what's going around and be part of the ride. Be responsible for yourself and other people. It's a really fun ride. It's a safe ride. It's not a race. Nobody is expected to go faster than they feel comfortable. We're not pace lining where we're 6 inches off of each other's tires. We can keep a safe distance and just to have a nice, enjoyable ride. Yeah.
I will say that we have quite a few new riders this year. The van that brings us supplies does have room for any rider who just needs to take a break or becomes too much for. So there's a real, at least I've always felt, sense of security in doing the ride, where if I just got too hot or too tired, there's always an opportunity to stop for a rest if needed. I think for me, it's just a good, in the back of my mind, knowing it's there.
Right. And I think it's also, I'd like to point out that how supportive the other riders are.
Yeah.
This is an incredibly well-supported ride from JCF. It's really well organized and really well staffed and stocked, but also the other riders are fantastic. And going out on a 55 or 58 mile ride on your own can be really intimidating. But when you're with a group and you know that, hey, there's a van 3 miles down the road and I don't need to worry about carrying anything, and I've got these other team members with me that are really great, I think that makes the ride so much more special and so much more doable for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of camaraderie where we, see someone who's maybe struggling on one, section, and a group of people, slow back down just to support with them. And it's just, I made some really amazing friendships throughout the years that I think are going to be long lasting. So, thank you, Tony. And I think we have one more week of training rides. Is that right? This Wednesday and Saturday. You want to confirm our last training rides?
I can't confirm that.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure you can always check our Facebook page, but the Wednesday ride on 6:30 from the lakefront, and then the Saturday at 7 a.m. is the last rides before. I know we often have a group on Sundays going from Caldwell Woods too. So check our Facebook if anyone wants to join us for some of our last training rides before we head out on in a couple weekends.
Yeah, that's one of the, I think, Carrie, if I can add one other thing,
Yeah.
That's one of the things this year that I found really, really amazing is how you talked about the community of people and friendships that have built. And we've seen sort of schedules are difficult, and we've seen a lot of people say, hey, I'm doing this ride at this week, you know, who wants to come? And the training has really sort of blown up and turned into something that people are supporting each other through the training and building friendships. And that makes it really, really, really gratifying to be part of it.
Yeah, I agree. I almost feel like the rides before the ride and the training is as much as part of the whole experience. I know for me personally, getting, you know, back in shape after this last year of COVID and not being really out as much, this, you know, kind of forced training has been really, really beneficial. And it's just been really fun. I mean, you know, socially too. So, and thank you for all your support of the foundation and the rides, Tony.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
All right, so thanks everyone. We're excited, and any questions, you know, contact us on social or email us, and we appreciate everyone's support, and we're excited for this year's ride. All right, thanks, Tony.